am a verbal processor. And so after I had enough confirmation of my autism diagnosis, I started sharing with my friends the things that I was finding, the realizations about just how many things, both big and small, in my life had been impacted and even shaped by my autism. It was super empowering to have an understanding of how and why my brain is the way that it is. One of my best friends, Teresa, is also differently abled in a way that isn't always visible to others. And she hates when people try to help her navigate without an accurate understanding of what her lived experience is like. And as I started learning more about me, she asked questions. What does executive dysfunction feel like? What makes it hard to motivate yourself? When your social battery is low, what's the best way to support you? And she's just listened and gotten to know my experience as I have gotten to know how my symptoms impact my life. I've always lived with someone, be it family or a roommate, and my biggest motivation for cleaning has always been the consequences of how it will impact other people. But I've recently had the opportunity to live by myself. I know, wild in this economy, right? But some things of that are super awesome, but without anybody to get mad if I don't clean or praise me if I do, y'all, it started looking rough. And if you ask my past roommates, including Teresa, they will tell you that if I think it's bad, it was bad 3 weeks ago. Teresa came down to visit for my birthday, and I was expressing frustration about how I had let things pile up and had identified that I needed to get it together and maybe establish some better systems. On her last night, she gifted me with one of my favorite experiences to date. She had been listening to what makes things hard for me. I hadn't realized how many of my symptoms were showing up as resistance to cleaning, specifically dishes, but she had. A lot of chores are a struggle for people with executive dysfunction issues, both between the lack of dopamine and also the struggle to figure out how to get started. Then the sensory issues of the inconsistent textures of old food on dishes, which I've gotten gloves to help with and found very helpful when I could find the motivation to clean. Then the demand for autonomy resists the social expectations of cleaning in general. There's also the drain on my energy required by navigating a world that isn't built for me. Even people who aren't autistic or have ADHD can tell you about how when you're exhausted, things you don't enjoy are even more laborious. And so she offered, as a gift, to do my dishes for me so that figuring out a new system like I'd been saying I should do didn't have to feel like such a big task, which was an awesome offer to begin with. But it didn't stop there. She started doing my dishes, and the thing that people misunderstand about executive dysfunction is that it's not actually laziness or a desire for other people to pick up the slack. So when she started doing my dishes, I got FOMO and just started picking up random in the kitchen so I could help. And I made a comment about, LOL, not me getting jealous over here picking up stuff, and she was like, well, you said that part of what makes it hard is not being able to identify a starting point, right? And I was like, yes. And then she said, well, would it feel helpful if I assigned you a task? Which effectively canceled out my pathological demand for autonomy because I got to choose to accept the task. And so she said, okay, great. You said you wanted to reorganize the refrigerator. Is this a good time to do that? I had mentioned earlier when I was putting something in the fridge that I didn't want that item to go there, but that I'd have to figure it out later. But she was right. This was a good time to do that. So now I had a clear task to do that didn't feel too overwhelming, and I was a part of the decision to do it. And she was in the kitchen with me, which also made it a social activity. And that gave it dopamine. When you can't reach something, you can ask someone taller to get it down for you. This was like Teresa helping me reach something that I couldn't access on my own. By listening to what was going on with me and being open to my experience being different than hers instead of making assumptions and judgments about my intentions or willingness, not only did I now have clean dishes, but I felt loved, seen, and heard, and we accomplished 5 tasks instead of what usually happens when I'm on my own, which is me flaming out trying to convince my brain to just get started. And it's interesting because what would make this easier for you, or what is hard about this, is often a question that we ask of people who are visibly differently abled, or sometimes we don't even have to ask. It's obvious that they can't open the door by themselves, or that they need to park closer to the building so they don't have to travel as far. But because of how mental health symptoms show up and the social history of making assumptions about why someone is doing what they are doing, the belief has been they aren't doing the thing because they're stubborn. Or they keep forgetting something because they don't care. Or they aren't making eye contact or reciprocating the conversation because they are rude. But nobody asked why or how to work together to find a solution. So, if you love someone, take a page out of Teresa's book. Whether you know if they have any specific diagnosis or not, ask them about their internal experience. What makes this hard for you? What would make this easier? Wheelchair ramps help everyone. And so if we support those who have different needs and abilities than us, then everybody benefits. Hashtag Team Teresa.